Well, hi, Beate. It's so wonderful to have you on our show today. The Author Revolution podcast is thrilled to bring you on because you have some amazing strategies and stories about you. But before we get started, would you mind telling my audience a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yes, of course, I'd be more than happy to do that. Thank you, Carissa, for having me. I'm excited to be on your podcast and shout out to all the writers and authors out there. Keep doing it. People need something to take their minds off and learn. So my name is Beate Chelette. I'm originally from Germany. I'm a first generation immigrant. So I came here when I was in my early 20s. And I am now currently working as the growth architect. And what that means is I'm architecting growth strategies in three different categories. So it's either people that need to build a business and have a business model that they need to flesh out. So when I work with an author, sometimes they wrote a book first and then they go, how do I build a business around this? And so then we figure out what the business is, how they would make money aside from the book, because we all know in order to make money just with writing books, you need to sell a lot of them. And the second piece is that I work with people that then have the business, but now they need strategies to grow and fix their lead generation and get in front of more people. And finally, those that have done that and they now need to scale and make themselves obsolete in the business so that they can finally get the freedom that they started this in the first place for.
That's awesome. That is so awesome. Well, Beate, you mentioned briefly that you're a first generation immigrant, and your story is a journey of one from being a broke single mom, having $135,000 in debt, to selling your business to Bill Gates for millions. And it's so incredibly inspiring, obviously. Can you share any of the pivotal moments or strategies that helped you to turn that situation around, and maybe like how authors could apply those strategies to their own financial challenges?
Yes. So I think it's important to be really clear about some of these things that happen in our careers or our lives. We have an idea. Everything always starts with an idea. And then you realize you need to become someone that has a different skill set, that has different abilities than what you have right now, because what you have is not enough. That causes a lot of friction because then you go, man, I thought I was just going to write this book and then everybody's going to buy it and they were going to pay me a lot of money. And then I was going to be picked up by a really big publisher. And it's going to become a global international bestseller. And then people are going to read the book. And then I'm going to get hired as a speaker. I'm going to travel first class all over the world. And I'm going to be the next Simon Sinek.
Yep, yep. I love Simon.
Sounds
Wouldn't that
about
be
right.
lovely? Yeah, it does sound fun. I love that vision.
Yes.
There's a but
And the
coming
reality,
though.
and the reality of it is you write the book and then your mom tells you it's a really great book and your friends tell you it's a really great book. And then you go, okay, so you schedule your readings and you get your CRM and you do all these things and you realize it's not enough. You realize it's an actual business. So my story is very much like that, where I came from Germany. I was a photographer, trained photographer, and I realized that I was better at the business side of things. And I love working with creative people. I love working with creative entrepreneurs, with visionary entrepreneurs, with people that really want to land their plane. And it's maybe not the regular kind of business like other people. It's not a CPA or a doctor. It's mostly people that have different ideas. And I encountered just a tremendous amount of difficulties. And I call myself an 8-time disaster survivor. And I had to overcome fires, floods, riots, a big
Wow.
earthquake. I had somebody vanish in a tsunami, one of my key vendors,
Oh my goodness.
who who they've never found the remains. And September 11th wiped out 500,000 in my business and literally shuttered it. I had a lawsuit against a former employee who started her business, which was my business without me, with my key vendor. And then they had invoices I wrote, paid to them. So there was so much that happened where at the end of it, I'm $135,000 in debt. And I'm going, it's just not freaking normal. Like, it's okay. I mean, you hear about people that one thing happened to, but you don't hear about people all of this happened to, but it happened to me.
Yeah.
And so I go to Germany. I want to drum up some business because I had this idea now with a stock photography syndication that I built on zero money. And my father has a stroke. My father didn't have a stroke. My father had pancreatic cancer. So my father passes away in 6 weeks. I'm now at the funeral, at the grave in Germany, at this picturesque town with a Baroque church behind us and the church bells ringing, and you overlook the whole valley, and it's just absolutely gorgeous and peaceful. And my phone rings, and it's my office in Los Angeles. We've been served a notice I'm losing my house.
Oh my goodness.
And at this moment, I fell on my knees. I raised my fist and I yelled at God, and I said, if you have a plan,
That would be a good time. Yeah.
that's exactly what I said. Now would be a really good time. And then I had no choice but to surrender because I had done everything. I had tried everything. I had made every phone call. I've written the business plan. I, even in my desperation, wrote a letter to the president of the United States. That's how desperate I was. And
Oh,
nothing was working.
oh,
I come back and I'm looking for a bankruptcy attorney, and I get a letter from the White House. And it says the
what?
president sends his best wishes. The president of the United States never saw my letter, of course. That was somebody in some mailroom somewhere, some intern. But they responded and they sent a copy of this letter to the Small Business Administration, the deputy chief director, no less,
Oh.
the second in command. And he thought, which nutcase would write a letter to the president instead of calling me directly? So he says, please do come in. And so I met him. I had my business plan. I had my work samples. And then we talked. And he says, you know, you could have just picked up the phone and called me directly. I said, never even occurred to me. And then they found me a bank that would underwrite my $135,000 in debt and restructure in a 10-year fixed loan. That freed up my line of credit. That got me to break even 3 months later. 18 months later, I'm the world leader in my category. And then a Bill Gates company comes and says, can you tell us how you do it? And I said, absolutely not. You want it? You buy it. And they
Good
said,
job.
how much do you want? I said, I want a couple $1 million. And they said, okay. And so that's how I got to sell my business to Bill Gates for millions of dollars.
Wow. Just because you were like, nope, nope. I love that. Was it intimidating?
Well, my point that I made earlier is that we think that our life is this trajectory of step by step up to the top. Our lives are a ridiculous roller coaster of a lot of difficult decisions we have to make, a lot of what feels defeat and failure. And then one day you go, oh, now I know why all of this came together. I've been in a lawsuit. I knew I had nerves like steel at that point
Sure.
because I was almost out and cold. This was nothing compared to almost losing everything.
Yeah.
And I knew how to stay the course and not give up because I've learned that. I knew how to get back up. I knew how to negotiate. I knew how to really focus on what was ahead of me. And all these things then eventually came and played into this in the most beautiful, wonderful way. But I didn't know that when I was going through it.
Yeah. Yeah. Because who would? I mean, when you're in the middle of all of those things happening at that moment, it is just such a bring you to your knees kind of situation. Did you did it ever occur to you that there was a surrender moment coming, or were you just like feeling like you were tossed into a ship that was in the middle of a storm? Like, how did that feel for you?
You know, that's a really good point to make and to look at. I think that when we are on these being forced on our knees, Marianne Williamson, a spiritual teacher, says that there comes a point where you don't even get up from your knees, you just stay on your knees because what's the point of even getting up? And I thought that described that situation really, really well. Is you you kind of just have to lean into it because you've done everything, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, the best way maybe to compare it is for anybody who's ever been in a relationship and you knew I've done everything. I've tried the therapy, I worked on myself, I've done the couples therapy, we've done things together, we've done date nights. I still don't like the guy.
Yep. Yep.
It's not my guy. And you say, he's a good man or he's a good woman, but I surrender to the belief that there must be somebody who suits me better because this is just too difficult.
Yep.
And then you
I
let it
completely
go.
understand that. Yeah. I definitely had that moment. Yeah.
Yes, most people do. And so in business, it's no different. If it's so difficult and you keep pushing and pushing and rolling that boulder uphill and you can't get the momentum, you're missing something.
Mm,
Or you're simply being groomed to learn on where this boulder needs to be for it to roll. But you
sure.
just don't know what it is, and I can guarantee you it isn't what it is. And the only reason I wrote a letter to the President of the United States, Carissa, is because my former mother-in-law was a complete nag about it. Why didn't you write it to the President of the United States? Have you written your letter yet? Why are you wasting your time with anybody else? He's the #1 guy in the country. If anybody can help you as a president, who writes a freaking letter to the President of the United States? Come on.
Is that what you were thinking?
Yeah. I'm
Okay.
like, "That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. What a waste of my time."
And yet, here it is. Isn't
And
that
I
funny?
only did it because she was relentless. And I
Does
wrote
she
the
know
letter
that?
just to she did, yes.
Yeah.
And the only reason I wrote it is to get her out of my hair because I
That's the
cannot have
universe or God nudging you, like, here's what you got to do. And you're just like, oh, so relentless. Why do I need to do these things?
and that is the other
Yeah.
point that I wanna make, to your question or your comment earlier, is that you don't know. You can't know. You do
Yeah.
not know what the best path is because sourcing is up to the source. That's not you.
Yeah.
Visioning, doing the work, and receiving is. How this happens, you typically don't. I mean, you do the work, you put it out there, but you don't know who's going to call. You don't know if a publisher is going to pick it up. You don't know if who reads it. You just don't. That's up to some other power. So
Yeah.
stop trying to control that part of the path. It's just not happening.
I love that. We teach that a lot in the courses that I offer as well, where the how is not your responsibility because you're meant to be surprised, you're meant to be delighted in this life. That's kind of our job. And so when you
Yes.
relinquish that control and and surrender to those how it ever happens, whatever it's meant to be, with whatever the timing is meant to be, then you have that like journey moment. You go along with it and you understand that this gets to come in whatever way it's meant to happen for me, like the right way it's meant to happen. And it's really cool because then you get these like surprising, like I never would have thought in a million years something would come from this letter type of moments.
You have no idea how many people have since written a letter to the President of the United States because they heard this story.
I
I'm
bet.
sure. I'm
I
sure many
bet.
presidents have gotten thousands of letters by now.
Oh my gosh, no doubt. That is so funny. Well, obviously you have a knack for uncovering hidden opportunities. So for authors who often work solo and might often feel overwhelmed by the marketplace, what are some of the strategies that maybe they could identify and seize like when it comes to underexplored niches or opportunities in the publishing industry as far as you're aware?
I think you always need to look in what's trending in the market, and there's multiple ways to do that. So you can go to Google Trends and you can look at what keywords are trending. We saw that about a year and a half back that the keyword certification was trending higher than the word Trump. And that led us to believe that people that were leaving corporate jobs or wanted to leave corporate jobs or just had been fired were looking for certifications. If you look at the
Mhm.
market, you see that there were a ton of certifications. Now, in like only 10 hours, you're certified business coach. Please, people. But but you know what I mean? Like in
Yeah.
6 weeks, in 10 weeks, you can be a high performance coach following some internet marketers thing. People are banking in on these ideas because they're closely watching it. So can you. So if you know what the trends are for example, Edelman Trust Barometer is a report that gets published every single year. So you learn what people are trusting and where they feel safe and what they don't feel safe at. Then you can take this information and spin it however you need to spin it. So if people do not trust the government and do not trust organizations, then what does that mean? That means the message has to be in charge of your own life. If people trust the CEO of a company more than they trust the government, then it means your business needs to look at banking in on what that is about these organizations that creates this trust factor that you then can use in your outreach or how you position your work in front of people. Or if there's a mental health crisis right now, which there is, and you're writing these really beautiful, positive fantasy stories, let's say, then you want to use that and say, people, you know, I write these fantasy stories because I want people's brain to take a break and not be bombarded with video games where they're killing other people, but to give them a beautiful, inspiring, a fantasy story with a positive message so that people have whatever these 3 hours of reprieve on a weekend where the world is in order. Like on a personal note, like I like watching the show FBI. And my husband, it cracks him up and he says, "What do you like about this?" I said, "Because I find it strangely satisfying that the bad guys get caught. The world is in order." So
Yeah.
once a week, I'll watch my FBI shows. And then in my world, everything is good because there was a bad guy that did something bad, and the good guys were hunting him down until the bad guy was put away. Voila, I feel good. That gives my brain a much needed break from all the stress and decision making we have. So when you write your books and when you go out in the market, don't just write the book. Think about what it does for the person who's reading it. That's what you're selling. You're not selling the story, you're selling what the story will do for me. Does it give me a moment of just relaxation? Does it give me, and there's certain genres, is like sort of these raunchy like rom-com books, which I find personally having a bit of a challenge reading those. Uh, but people love it because they go, "Oh my God, sexy hot romance is alive."
Yeah.
Or maybe it spices up, their own sex life. I mean, you don't know. Use
Yeah.
that. Be
Yeah.
unabashed about it and say, we have found that people who read spicy romance have better relationships because they are more inspired. And it's probably true. So step into that, own that, and don't feel bad about it. You double down on what people back off. And so my advice really is the hidden opportunity lies in what's the market doing. So if people are stressed out and overwhelmed, to stay with this example on the raunchy novel, they probably are too overwhelmed to connect. We also know that there's a whole movement of incels, involuntary celibacy, men that haven't, been intimate with a woman because they don't know how. I mean, if you played your entire life video games and you killed a whole bunch of things and then suddenly you're supposed to know how to romance a woman.
Right.
So there's an opportunity for you to say, well, the reason I write these is because of that. When I wrote my book, Happy Woman, Happy World, I wrote this book very specifically as a soft cover book. The chapters were written short enough so that you could take it to the bathroom. That's literally what I was thinking.
Okay.
And I told women, leave it in the bathroom. Because then your husband, when he's in the bathroom, because sometimes men appear woefully unprepared, you happen to
Yes.
have the book, right there, and the chapter is exactly long enough for one session.
I
That's
love that so much.
that's how much I thought about this.
Okay.
And then you get a review and it says, well, this book is not just for women, it's also for men. I know. But
It was
so
under disguise.
it was exactly. So be creative and have some fun with it.
I love that. That is super cute. Well, you kind of have touched on this a little bit, but you believe that success resides in the intersection of strategy and spirituality. And I love that. It's part of the reason that I was very much drawn to you. So, how can authors incorporate this with their writing process, this belief of spirituality and strategy coming together?
Yes. So there, I think there's a tremendous moment of activation. And the term activation really only resonates with people that have been activated. They know that there's something greater than ourselves. If you think that you got onto this planet and whatever, it's like 1 in 6 billion chance that you even make it here, and that's all a coincidence, by all means, go ahead and do that. I don't think so. I think that everybody who's here, and I'm a very spiritual person. I did an ayahuasca journey, which kicked my butt. And it's preposterous to think that you got here and it's just all a big fat coincidence. And then we just do stuff and then we die and nothing ever happens. I mean, the evidence is to the contrary. If nature is ruled by laws, physics, then it must apply to us too. And when you really dig into these laws of attraction, or the spiritual laws of success, or the universal laws, the laws of reciprocity, the law of the law of attraction is what most people are really familiar with. The law of polarity. The law of polarity says that the only reason you understand that there's black is because there's white,
Mm-hmm.
because otherwise it would make no sense. So that
Yep.
means that if you're broke, the opposite of that must exist, because it's a law. As above, so below.
Yep.
So if you are focused on your side of it, the broke, but because the law exists that the wealthy must exist, your only job is to shift your mindset out of broke into wealthy.
Right.
And then people are like, well, how's that going to work? Well,
Yeah.
ask black and white. One day the sun is up and the next moment it isn't. And then people say, well, I believe it a little bit. I said, well, if you believe it a little bit, imagine this scenario. We're going for a walk. We come by an oak tree. This is an oak tree like no other oak tree. So the oak tree says, you know what? All this stuff with spring, and so it's way too stressful for me. I'm just going to put out about 100 leaves. We'll see how it goes. If people stop, admire my leaves, the squirrels comes, the bird come, maybe one nest, and I feel good about that, then I'm going to do a slow rollout of the other leaves over the next couple of weeks. How's that?
A little bit odd, isn't it? Yeah.
I mean, everybody's like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. It's all or nothing, right?
Yeah.
Spring comes, the action takes place.
Yep.
Or did you see the tree then in fall and go like, man, I'm a loser. I'm such a loser. I'm losing all my trees. That's it. I'll never have another leaf on in my life again. That's it. I like, people think I'm dead.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
December. Not one leaf. I'm ugly. I'm naked. There's no tree ever. It's just part of the process, but we constantly judge everything. That's where spirituality and success and really, really, really interconnects, is that you are not that special. You are ruled by the same rules that the rest of the world is ruled by. If it exists in nature, it must exist for you. If somebody does it, it must be possible. If it's possible, it must be possible for you. If it's possible for you, then the question isn't can I, but how can I?
And the how has to be handed over. So then it's surrender, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, so good. I love that. And it's like something that so many people don't get. They think that if they keep butting their head up against it, or if they keep efforting, or if they keep just hammering away at it, it will eventually happen. And sometimes it might, but it's probably not going to be as fulfilling as you'd hoped because of
It's
that.
exhausting. That's the
Yeah.
burnout formula. And I'm gonna be honest. I mean, I'm a control freak. I'm a freaking German strategist. I mean, does it get any more controlling than that? But but you run out of steam because you do so much and you try so much, and then it's not working. And then at one point you say, this is ridiculous. I can't keep doing this anymore. And then God, spirit, universe, whatever you want to call it, says, finally, now I can do my job. I've been reading, I've been following and reading the book from Tasha Silva, It's Not Your Money, which I highly, highly recommend for any writer, artist, any person out there. And the premise of the book of It's Not Your Money is to say, you're here for a limited amount of time. It's not really yours. Like, you're not
Yeah.
taking this with you, right? It's what we're utilizing right now. But if you detach yourself from I'm getting paid to I'm doing God's work, or I'm doing the work I came here to do, and I'm getting compensated for that on the terms that, have been evaluated. Now you take all this kind of stress out. And
Right.
so I really like this about Tasha Silva. And then she has a prayer in there, and part of the prayer goes like, take away what's not mine and allow to come in what needs to come in. And then stuff breaks. And you go, wait, well, I've been saying the prayer, I've been visualizing this, and I asked for things to fall away, but they are. What do I do now?
Right? This is not fun. This is not the fun part of this
No.
process.
Oh, it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah.
That part, and I give this to everybody. This is really tough. But this is where the surrender part comes in. And I think we are in an era of full-on surrender,
Mm.
that those of us who believe, truly, truly believe and envision that we are here to be fulfilled and happy, and that we're here to spread our message, and that there's a market for it. I mean, there are a lot of people on this planet. Don't tell me you can't find 50,000 people who want to read your book.
Oh, absolutely. And I love the concept of surrender too. That like for me, it's let go. So I have like a bracelet and everything just to remind me. So my word of the
I
year
love
is
it.
let go, which is actually two words, but you know what I mean. And it's always about that surrender, like no longer like if to let go, it's okay to get rid of the things that no longer serve, like the old versions of yourself, the old ways you handled things, the people that you have in your life, whatever it is, like if it's not serving any longer, then it's time to let go. So I love that. The concept is very, very resonant with me this year.
And it's a great concept, but then it happens.
Yeah.
And then you go,
Yeah.
well, I prayed for it, but I didn't actually think it was going to happen, because you are in the letting go part, because you forget that the second part of the prayer is let the good stuff come in. And then
Yeah.
you're judging the nagging mother-in-law.
About writing a letter. Dang you.
I write a
Why?
letter. It's like, that's not what I need right now. I need money. Why are you telling me to write a letter to the president? I don't have time for that. I have important things to do. I have things to fix. And that's where we get in trouble, is that we don't trust the path. And right now, as I'm back into this entire motion of, I'm there again. And I'm like, seriously, does this ever end? No, it doesn't, because you get to the next level. And then you get to the next level, and it just, and everything is like, my daughter's going to move away with my 8-month grandbaby to Las Vegas, because my son-in-law is going to PT school.
Okay.
I've been praying, let the things fall away and new things come in. Well, that's not what I meant.
Right? Wait a second. What?
Wait a second, that's painful. I don't want that. I want my grandbaby 15 minutes away from here so I can play with her. But then when you think about it, I'm a pretty strong person. It's probably really good for them if they are moving away for whatever the 3 years that he's going to school, and focusing on that, and building that family unit without external influence, which is what seems to be happening for them. So then it's not happening to me, then it's also happening for me, because that will make them better. But this feels terrible right now.
Right? Right?
Is my little granddaughter, and we play hard. You know, we have to sort shapes and
Right?
look at flamingos and read books.
Yeah. Yeah. And get like really solid on that walking bit. Like,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yes.
That is so true. It's such a great mindset to remember too, that when things fall away and we're not like we weren't necessarily meaning them, but that they can still be working for you, that you're still, I mean, because who knows? The house still is not necessarily presented itself. You might get inspired to go move somewhere near Las Vegas for a while yourself. Who knows? Like all sorts of things could come up and happen. Or maybe they don't like it in
You could have
Vegas.
a job that gets you there, you
Yeah.
know, for weeks
Yeah.
at a time. So, but to your point, the judgment, the permanent judgment is where we are at. So I wrote the book. I did my bestseller campaign. Crickets.
Oh no.
What do I do now? Oh, you thought that was all there is? That's just one step.
Yeah.
So what is the next step now? What's the business that you're going to build around this? What's the message you have? Who are
Yeah.
the people you need to talk to? Where's the community you need to build? Where are people that need to hear what you just wrote? Are you reaching out? Are you expecting that they magically come to you? I once had a
Yeah.
someone in one of my sessions, and she said something to me that really stuck with me. And this is a very artist environment or artist thought process. She said, "I feel my work is like a pearl in the oyster." And I blurted out, "Carissa, good luck waiting for a diver."
Mm, yeah. Yeah. And what did she say?
Nothing.
Oh,
Because she felt that it was so precious and so amazing and so cool that she really did not need to, she wanted to be discovered.
okay.
She did not want to make herself discoverable.
Oh, and there's a big difference.
Huge
There's a
difference.
huge difference. Yeah,
Because spirit wants, you still need to take the action. You still need to do the work.
for sure. Yeah,
It can't come in unless you initiate the energy.
absolutely. Yeah, it's taking that inspired action step is like when I teach manifestation for authors, it's the first one is your decision. You have that idea, you decide you're going to go for it. Second step is trusting that it's yours. So handing over the how to the universe, letting it come in, being inspired by whatever might come through, and then taking those inspired action steps to make sure you're in alignment and can have it to receive. So yeah, it's so important to to be moved to take those action steps and to pull in whatever's meant to be coming in. I agree. Oh,
100%, yes. And that's exactly the order. I'm glad you said make the decision, because in all spiritual teachings, I was just re-listening to the Four Agreements, and that's the first is your word. Your decision is your word. It's not a wish. It doesn't say the first step's a wish. It says it's a
yeah.
decision. It's a word.
Yep.
I am doing this.
Absolutely. And it's so the decisive energy when you actually make the decision, it's the difference between I really want to go to Las Vegas versus I am going to be in Las Vegas on X date. You know, it's such a different vibe, such a different energy when it comes to that. And it goes for everything that we're trying to create and make in our businesses, our author careers, whatever. Right. Yeah.
Yes, 100%. Yeah.
So can you elaborate on the concept of niche sizing, and how authors can apply
I
this
think, yeah.
effectively? I love that.
Yes.
Such a great term. How they can apply it effectively to their audience, you know, to stand out in this crowded market space. How do they go for this?
Yes. So niche sizing is a really interesting concept, because people believe, everybody always says you get rich in the niche. I think that you can, that your niche, whatever you want to call it, that over nichicizing is actually detrimental, because the longer you are in business, the more experience you have. And then somebody comes to you and says, Carissa, so what exactly do you do? Do you do mindset for authors, or do you help them write the book, or do you are you like, which of these things really are you? And you say, well, I it's a system, right? It's like I help
Yeah.
people. Oh, well, that's very broad. That's really super broad. And then because you're smart, you say, It's not one or the other. It's a system that's the niche. So when you're looking at nichicizing, how I call it, don't allow yourself to get pigeonholed into this one particular category, but think about if you were to put an umbrella over all the things that you're capable of, what would that new niche be for you? So I'm the growth architect. That means everything that's relating to business growth is my area of genius. Why? Because I can take it to 30,000 feet. I can look at your business. I can figure out exactly where the issue is. I have a 5-star success blueprint. I can identify, it literally takes me half an hour where the problems in the business are and what needs to be fixed. And then I have a program that specifically manages this one piece. That's my skill set.
That's
So
awesome.
I'm not trying to sell you any one particular program. I'm not trying to help you to speak from stage because that magically will make everything okay, only for you to find out you need to have an offer from stage, and then somebody else will offer, then you need an online course, and somebody else, then you need leads, and then somebody else says you need to do conversion, then somebody says you need to build a funnel. $100,000 later, you still have nothing. That's not what I do. I look at this and I said, what's your personality type? What do you want to achieve? What's the business model? And then here are the pieces you need to build it. Much easier.
Absolutely. That is so good.
That's the niche. That's my niche.
Yeah,
If you really think about it, is that a niche? Well, it's a niche because I say it is. And
sure.
so that's when you build your thing, that's what you need to do. In the same token, you say, my niche is not this one thing, but my niche is the overall thing under which the things that I know how to do fit.
Sure, sure. That makes a lot of sense because like for my urban fantasy pen name, for instance, like my niche, I guess that I've created is that like fate interweaves everything. So that's kind of where the threads of fate unravel is my tagline for that particular pen name because in all of the books, fate is plays a role. And so it doesn't matter if it's paranormal fantasy or if it's science fiction fantasy or if it's urban fantasy or whatever, that's the thing that weaves all of those stories together. You know what I mean? And
And
so
I like that. Go ahead.
yeah, so I can see how authors then could use that, create their version of a niche to be able, but in order to make it successful, they have to explain it, right? They have to tell people this is what my niche is. Like you say, growth architect, and you repeat that over and over to the point where people understand that's what she is, that's what she does. It's why you need to go to her. And so it's like that makes total sense to me. Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, exactly. And then to your point, yeah, to keep this real, so if I were to work with you and you just told me that, then I would take a look at all your stuff that you've done. And I said, well, is this a message that's clear? And is there difference, is it faith-based authors, or is it a faith-based message delivered in all kinds of more modern, updated ways, which I think is way sexier, by the way, right?
Right?
To give people the opportunity to deliver powerful, positive, faith-based messages under one umbrella that delivers the message. Because a lot of people have a problem with organized religion, and rightfully so, if I may say. And a lot of people believe organized religion is amazing. So to say that I'm specialized in making sure that if you've been activated, called, you give it a particular term, to deliver a specific message in some sort of format, that I help you to, with my unique system that utilizes specifically the honing of this message, because the world needs a lot of healers right now, if you look at what's going on. And the
Absolutely.
message needs to be delivered in every genre, to every personality type, in any format. Anyone will grab a book and read it. Period. That's your specialty. And then you need a name, right?
Right. Right.
The
So good.
fairy. Mm-hmm.
I like that. So, okay, this kind of ties back to some of the other things that we said, but what are like, are there any, I guess I just should say, are repeatable type structures that you've identified with authors that they can adopt to consistently grow their authority and and scale their impact, especially when resources are limited? Because many authors when they start out, or even when they've been working for a while, the funds aren't quite there yet. Like they haven't quite broken through their genre or made the impact with their authority. Are there any of those repeatable structures that you identified?
Yeah, so one is to do what we do is podcast guesting and or podcast hosting, whatever tickles your fancy. You need a strategy on how do you take authority in your market. And I have news for you. Nobody will give you the authority, but Carissa and I, with the authority bestowed in us in this podcast interview, we herewith grant you the authority to be the authority in your subject.
I love that. I love that so much.
So,
You
so
have been
now with that,
anointed.
you've
Go
been
forth.
anointed. So with that out of the way, you have every right in the world to say you're the authority. The example everybody always uses is Muhammad Ali, the boxer, when he says, I'm the greatest boxer of all times. He came up with this himself. And then he just repeated it over and over and over and over again and went into the opponent's face an inch from it. Then I was like, how does it feel to lose and get beaten up by the greatest boxer in the world? And then the press, of course, loved it. So you are the one. Nobody gave me the tag, the growth architect. I created that tag. It's just now
Yep.
other people call me the growth architect. So now I can say I'm known and called the growth architect, but really I came up with that myself. So you want to come up with something clever that makes you the authority. Being an author is not an authority. That's being an author. Being a coach is not an authority. That's being a coach. Being a consultant is not an authority. That's a consultant. Being the growth architect is an authority. Being the faith fairy is an authority. So you need to figure out what you want to be the authority in and then relentlessly hound that down into the way you show up, what you say. You need to create a specific language that we use. We designed the 5-star success blueprint. We architect growth. It's the growth architect. There's 5 different categories. There's sessions, modules. Like you got to really think it through. And a lot of times that's where authors fall short. What do you do? I'm an author. That's the end of the conversation.
Right. Like,
Or even if you were to say, well, I help authors to write their books and make them bestsellers, then I think, well, I'm not writing a book. I don't want to do that. I turn around and walk away.
right.
If you were to say to me, I'm the faith fairy for authors, I'm like, faith fairy? What's that? Now we have a conversation. And
Right.
then you would say, well, I take authors that have a message that is based on a spiritual or faith-based concept, and I help them to bring this to market. That is so interesting. Like, can you give me like an example? Now you're full on in the conversation because you don't know who they know. That's how this works. And then you can talk about it in a way. And the more and more you talk about it, then more and more and more people will pick up on the message and say, oh, you want to write a book that has a spiritual, oh, I know exactly the person you need to talk to. That's her specialty. So that's how you become the authority. But you have to be clear what it is. You have to design the language and you have to stay on brand and on message.
Right, right. And that's so important. And I don't think many authors really think about, especially when they're first starting, any of that concept, like about having a brand or having a message, even because they're just so enthused about getting the story out and not so much thinking about this is a business. And so it's usually after they've got 3 or 4 books and they're like, I think there's something here, but I'm not quite sure what to do with it. You know? Oh my gosh.
Think about it early on. What tickles you? So when I was at this ayahuasca journey, which is a very spiritual journey, I got the download for a book that's around a subject called Lead, Don't Beg, what my batshit crazy mom taught me.
Love that.
Because I have a lot of trauma, right? And like when I say it, people like immediately go and want to buy it on Amazon. I haven't written it yet. And then I go like, yeah, but how does it even fit into anything that I do as the growth architect, right? But then I was thinking about it and I was like, well, I talk about strategy, but strategy to me really is a lot of spirituality, but I never talk about that it is spirituality. So I now added this to my brand and say at the end, success is at the intersection of strategy and spirituality because it became very clear to me. So now it fits a little bit better. So now if I look at how does this fit, the only way a book like this will fit into what I do is if I say traumatized children become traumatized authors or traumatized leaders. So if we understand on how to solve trauma and assume leadership, which is another word for authority, then we're not just healing ourselves, we're healing our children and other generations, and we stop the trauma circle.
Right.
Suddenly, the book has purpose.
Yeah.
Because that fits into growth architecture, because there comes a point in when you grow as a person and in your business where you have to make a decision, who are you going to be?
Right.
Because you're going to get older. How are you going to pay it forward? How are you going to mentor? How do you share the information that you have, which is where I am at? I mean, I'm a grandmother after all. How do I take what I know and make it a meaningful contribution for the greater good of all? And then we're back into the spiritual concept of reciprocity, gratitude, giving freely with no expectation of return.
Right. Which leads right back to growth,
Which is like
because
right
that,
back.
yeah, that is so cool. I love that. That that is such a neat way to look at it all too. That is really cool. Yeah.
How do
Okay,
you
so
tie it?
what was that?
I said, how do you tie it back?
Yeah. Well, and it's yeah, it's all about looking at that broader perspective and seeing how, like you said, how do you want to show up? Who is the version you're going to become, or what is it that you want to, present to the world so that they understand who you really are at your core? Because we've got so many layers to us, and so we have to give them something. They're going to make up their minds anyway. So why not give them the thing that is going to resonate the most, and then you can tie it all together. I think creatives definitely have an easier like ability to do that too. Like authors, we can see kind of those threads for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And you know what? And that is so important that you just said that, because creatives at this point going to go, I don't have no idea what she's talking about. I cannot do that. But you're absolutely correct. If anybody can, the creative can, because that is the visioning, that's the storytelling. Just put on the music, close your eyes and dream away. That's what we do as creatives, right?
Right?
Or we have this ability to envision this, because we are used to creating ideas. Just channel that outside of maybe the story of the book into the larger story.
Yeah.
So think about the television show, right? So one episode in a season, is a part of a series.
Yep.
So if you get away from your one episode to the season, to the series, now you know where this idea needs to go.
Absolutely. It gives you that broader perspective of it and allows you to look at things just slightly differently without having to get stuck or having to feel like this is all it's going to be. And then you can, create something new versus being in that self-fulfilling prophecy of nothing's working. Nothing's working. I'm still in this bubble. I'm still going around the same, chasing my tail, doing the same things. Yeah. Okay, so I want to talk about your book, Happy Woman, Happy World, so, because you introduce a concept called ego rhythm, which helps define priorities at different stages of life, which I really love. How can authors apply this to like their own writing careers, their personal lives, and like the obvious ups and downs that are going to be coming around in this long game of a career, really?
Yes. So this concept came to me. So my daughter was 3 years old, and she was coughing and coughing and coughing. And I heard this voice in my head, take her over to your bed. She cannot sleep alone tonight. And I took her over, and as I'm brushing my teeth, I'm hearing a sound I'll never forget for the rest of my life. And it went like this. And then she stopped breathing. And I ran out of the bathroom, picked her up, threw her over the shoulder, tried to wake her up, and went to the emergency room. Turns out that secondhand smoke had caused an almost fatal asthma attack. And then she had asthma. And it became like my I was obsessed with it. And then one day she was 7 and she grew out of it. I'm like, what? This was everything. I was afraid for her life, and I ran from doctor to doctor. It caused so much drama and stress, and now it's just over. And then I realized that that's just life. Like, you do one thing and then suddenly that part is over, and then something else comes, and then that's over and another thing comes, like a wave. And so I came up with this concept of ego rhythm and said, what if there's a determined rhythm? So you meet someone, you're in your love ego rhythm, and you're all over. That's not going to last forever. I mean, the love will last forever, but this like fluffy feeling won't last forever. It's a
Yeah.
different kind of love that takes place. Then you have a child, and then your mom ego rhythm kicks in. And that really is the most important thing for the first 3 years. And then your child is becoming more independent the day they turn 3. And then you get your freedom back every day until your kids can't stand being around you and they yell at you and they tell you that they hate you.
Right, right.
And then you can't wait for them to leave. So, so if you look at this from the perspective, and so there's 9 algorithms which I've outlined in the book, that is available on Amazon as an audiobook, as a printed, and as a Kindle book. And I outline this, that we have this tendency to think that the rhythm we are in is the rhythm we are going to be in forever. You're not going to be alone forever. You may not be together forever. Your kids will not stay with you forever. Your kids won't stay small forever. You won't drive that car forever. Your lease will end. You will move. You need a bigger place, a smaller place. So if you lean into the rhythmic component of life, and this is how an author can use it, is to say, what rhythm am I in? And then be in that, make that the main priority. And all the other rhythms are secondary to the primary one, which makes life so much easier.
Yeah, yeah. I think it makes so much sense too. When I was looking into that, I was like, wow, that makes so much sense, because as authors, like I was saying earlier, like you get stuck in this concept of thinking it's never going to work for me, or it's never going to grow. Nothing is happening. I'm doing all the things. Why isn't this doing something? Not everybody, but a lot of authors do. I've seen it over and over. And it's like, that's not always going to be how it is. You're going to eventually learn something that's going to spark an idea. You're going to end up writing a series that's going to be a breakout. You'll end up choosing to do something different. Who knows? You're always being redirected to where you need to go and what you need to learn. And all of those tools are being like brought to your tool belt. So I love the concept of like describing it so that people almost have a preconceived notion, or a, they're able to conceptualize it so that they don't get themselves stuck. That's so cool.
That's it. Yeah, well, that's the whole point, is that we get so stuck in this that we think that this is the beginning of the end of the rest of our lives. And
Right.
then we forget that, oh, come on, how many times have you said that? That's it. I'll never, I'll never be in another relationship. Fine. I'm going to be alone for the rest of my life because you had such a horrible, horrible heartbreak.
Right.
Oh, I met someone.
Because I wasn't even looking and I didn't even
Because
want it. And then,
I wasn't even looking. Yes, exactly.
yep. I definitely understand that one. Yep. And that's usually how life is too. It's like when you're efforting, when you're trying so hard, you get in those cycles and you can't quite escape it. And then the second you're like, fine, I don't even want to have a baby anymore. Let's adopt. And then all of a sudden you're pregnant. Like that's like all the time. Yeah.
You're absolutely correct. It's the decision, and then it's the saying what you want. It's the surrender to the outcome, and let God, or let spirit, whatever you want to call it, and then be okay with whatever happens. And then it does what it needs to do. And oftentimes it's better than what you thought you would. Or it falls apart first to let the thing that needs to come in actually come in.
Right. Right. And that's so key too. It's like sometimes you get the thing that you think you want, and sometimes it has to fall apart so that you get the thing you really needed. Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Okay, so you teach the importance of setting a main focus. and restructuring life for a better work-life balance, which I think many authors, honestly, they could use more of. I know I certainly could in the early stages of my career. Could you share some of the strategies or tips that authors can use to be able to get into that like work-life balance flow?
Yeah, it's really about setting priorities and holding yourself accountable to it. This goes back to, giving your word, making the decision. If you are at a point where your family is in the way of you working more, then you're probably out of balance. And if you are completely exhausted all the time, if you give more than what you get back, then you're probably in trouble. I'm not saying that this cannot happen all the time. I heard a really great line. Somebody says, well, every 6 months evaluate and then kind of take stake and then see what the balance is. So if it balances out in 6 months, you're okay. So if you have, a lot of time you're working and then some relaxation time, you're okay. But always make sure that you double check on whether or not you're in balance.
Yeah, that makes so much sense because we get into these crazy making lifestyles that you talk about too, and it's like we can't quite envision how to get out of it because there's so many weird things in the indie publishing industry where it's like you learn something, you think this is the only way to make it happen, and you just keep going, and so it just gets a little bit crazy. Well, Beate, thank you so much for being here. I would love for my audience to be able to find out more about you. Where should they go to be able to learn what you do and obviously grab your book?
Yes, 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 yes. So get the book, Happy Woman, Happy World, again on Amazon, available. While we're at it, please make sure wherever you pick up this podcast that you go there now and give Carissa a 5-star review and a shout out. Comments are absolutely critical right now because of algorithms done by AI. So any kind of activity will tell the search engines and Apple that this is a podcast worth listening to. So give her some love
Oh,
back. And as for me, please go to whatsyourtalentworth.com. I've created a profit formula. I created a quiz where you can figure out, and it's really ridiculously accurate, what your skill set is worth, your talent is worth in this market. So just go to what's your talent worth and then fill that out. And it actually is a calculation. So only put in numbers, and then it'll give you a number back. If you have heard anything and you go, I must speak to Beate, just go to uncoverysession.com, fill that out, schedule some time with me, and then let's talk about what I can do. I'd be happy to brainstorm on your idea, your business, and whatever we come up with is yours. And if there's anything I can do to help you, then I will tell you, and then you decide whether or not that's something you want to do. So super simple, and I'm everywhere under the Growth Architect and YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. Just go find me.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much for being here. You have been an absolute joy to have on the show. Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure. You've been amazing. Thank you so much, Carissa, and keep up the amazing work that you do.